Hello everyone, it's Carrie here from the Female Entrepreneur Association, and welcome to the 10-minute Masterclass, your weekly dose of inspiration to build a successful business. And I am so excited because joining me today is the amazing Rebecca Campbell, who is the author of this incredible book, Light is the New Black, a guide to answering your soul's calling and working your light. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. I love everything you do, Carrie. So really happy.
I am so excited because I know you're going to be sharing more about how we can all reconnect with ourselves, which is amazing. But firstly, this book is so good. It's so amazing and full of so many powerful and empowering lessons and messages that I feel relate so much to entrepreneurs, because I think as entrepreneurs, we have this inner knowing or this feeling that there's something more for us to do. And so we kind of set off on this little journey to figure it all out. But so often on the journey, we end up feeling a bit off track or disconnected, or we get kind of lost and lonely and feel confused about everything. And I feel like this is like a guide to really help people to reconnect with themselves so that they can have the impact that they want to have. So I just love it. I think it's so brilliant. And before we get into talking more about this and your amazing tips, I thought it'd be really good for us to share more about your story, because your story is so inspiring. I've heard you speak before and it was so brilliant. And I just think that your story also kind of leads to why you've actually written this book. So can you share a little bit about it with us and tell us how it all came about?
For sure. Well, I guess, like you said, like so many entrepreneurs, I had that just yearning, that ache, that knowing inside of me, that niggle where it was like I was here for a reason and there was work for me to do, and it felt like I couldn't relax until I found it and did it. So it was really stressful, actually. And I think most entrepreneurs I know, particularly people who are going in to be of service, it's like that insatiable, just kind of like, oh, what is it? I have to find what it is. And for me, looking back now, it's very clear to me that I always knew what it was, but I didn't have the courage to step into it. So for me, I'd always been intuitive, empathic, all of that, very attuned to that call of my soul, but I didn't quite understand it. And when I was around about 13, 14, I had this like massive awakening where it's like everything just got turned up full ball, and had some like pretty far out experiences. But long story short, I really discovered that I discovered the term light worker, which to me just means anyone who's heard the call of spirit to be of service, right? And I remember picking my first self-help book and spiritual development Journey of the Soul book off the shelf, and I had a vision of me talking on stages and being a spiritual teacher and being an intuitive. But at that young age, I was like, how the hell am I meant to do that? Because I looked at all these spiritual teachers who were, the prerequisite was like 40 years plus, divorced, lost many people through death, like just, obese and then skinny. It was like all of that. And I was like, who am I to possibly do that? And I think that's such a common thing for us entrepreneurs. We have this knowing inside of us, but it's like, well, who am I to do that? Like I could not possibly be my heroes,
Yeah.
And so I went very quickly into what I call a spiritual closet, because I started telling like my friends and family and stuff like about all my experiences with past lives and the visions I was receiving. And they were just like, that is freaking weird. And so I started having my best friends, like I had my normal life, but my best friends ended up being like 60 years plus, and I'd go to them to courses, intuitive development courses. And so my life just kind of like separated, and I went very consciously into a spiritual closet, kept my spiritual development going, but then had the facade of the normal life as well. And for me, I decided to be an undercover light worker. And so I went to university and I forged a great career as a creative director at an advertising agency. The goal, like so many of us, it was like, what's the goal? It's the salary, it's the job, it's the awards, it's all of that kind of stuff. And so for me, it was become a creative director by the time I'm 30, win all the awards over in London, because I'm from Australia, as you can probably tell. And so I moved over here, and it was like just before my 30th birthday, all of those things had come true. And yet it just didn't fit with me. It was like that voice, that niggle that had been there for so long was just getting louder and louder, and the more my so-called dreams came true, the more uncomfortable I felt. And it was like the universe had to turn off all the lights for me to kind of go and crumble my life in order for me to have the courage to step into it. It was, within a short period of time, just before, I remember just waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning in the sweat, the panic attack kind of state of just like, how can I get out of this life I'd consciously created? And feeling so desperately that I knew what my path was, but I didn't see it. I felt like I had so much to lose. Like, what if it doesn't work out? And so, yeah, and it was like as if the universe intervened. And so within a very short period of time, I lost one of my extremely close friends. And then another, and and my 11-year relationship ended, and he went back to Australia. My job I just couldn't show up anymore, and all these things that meant so much to me no longer did. And I remember even moving house from the place I was sharing with my ex-partner I decided to move to Notting Hill in this beautiful studio flat. It was like living the dream in London. And then within 24 hours, I discovered that was falling apart too. And it was such a poetic mirror. Like, I'm there bursting in tears because of all the grief and me kind of clinging to the life that I'd consciously created. And then it's just falling down around me. And this one day when I was just bursting into tears going, what am I meant to do? What do you want me to do, God? The water pipes burst as I was like losing it as well. And I was like, I went into what I call, and I encourage this moment in people. I went into my God moment. I'm like, F you, God. And it kept on coming back for me. What it was just like, trust that niggle, trust that ache. Our soul has always been calling us. The only difference is that we've kind of been raised in a society. So like Einstein says that the intuitive mind is a sacred gift. The rational mind, its faithful servant. But we've created a society that worships the servant and dismisses the gift. And that was the real turning point for me. I'd been doing client work, intuitive work, but when it came to my own life, I couldn't get out of the way.
Yeah.
Ever since I did that, and I vowed to really show up to that call every day and answer it no matter how much sense it makes. That's what I say. Follow your intuition, especially when it doesn't make sense. It's like my path has been built for me. So I'm not having to be out there with the bricks and the cement and all of that. I'm just having to tune in and walk that path. So that's really been the journey for me, and really getting out of my own way.
I love this, and I just feel like there's so many different things in what you've just said that I think people are going to be like, I want to know how she did it. Because I think as entrepreneurs, especially people trying to walk that path that's their path to walk, they often feel so stuck in their own way and so terrified of, and feeling like they've got so much to lose and so terrified to actually put themselves out there. So I mean, I guess it all just comes back down to tuning in with yourself, like you're saying. But how do you do that? How do you actually really reconnect with yourself? How do you get out of your own way so that you can start living the life you want to live and being true to yourself?
So I'd say for me, it's three main ways. The first one is showing up to non-negotiable spiritual practice. And I know that sounds very like non-negotiable, like robot, but I cannot speak more highly enough of actually showing up to a practice every single day. Because like I said before, the soul's always calling, but often there's just so much going on that we don't hear the clarity. And our intuitive gift is like, it's a muscle, right? So if you want abs, you got to do sit-ups. If you want to hear the call of your soul, you got to sit down and listen. Yeah. And so I do a form of meditation called light sourcing, which is actually connecting to the Mother Earth energy, but also the light of the universe, right? And when I say that, I'm talking about that mystery of a force that guides the tides, the oceans, the flowers to open, the planets to move. And I think with us as entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs, it's about actually resting back into that feminine.
Yep.
So our masculine can be led by the feminine. And what happens when you connect to that force? Because as entrepreneurs, it's like, do we need to do it ourselves, or can we rest into that beautiful organizing force that's guiding the whole planet, right?
Yeah.
And so with light sourcing, and I've got a free one on my website. I'll send you the link for anyone who's listening. And you just basically connect in with that and fill up your well. So, and it's like you're coming back into that flow with the universe. So I'd really encourage that. The second thing I'd really encourage is nature. And it sounds like such a obvious one and such a like, oh, really? What's that going to do? But again, it's getting back into your feminine, getting yourself grounded, breathing. And more often than not, particularly in if you're based in the UK, oh my gosh, the parks here are so gorgeous. But nature brings us back, grounds us, and then generally speaking, it inspires us. And when we're inspired, we're in our spirit and we're connected again to that greater force that surrounds us. And then the third one is following what lights you up, right? So again, this sounds so freaking simple, but shall I tell the story with the flowers and the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I asked myself this question, because I knew that I was in the doing rather than the being, I was so attached to the outcome. I knew I needed to write and all of that, but I was attached to the outcome of, oh God, if I need to write, it needs to get published rather than just showing up to write, right? So I asked myself, okay, what lights me up? And I discovered there were two things mainly. One was flowers, which just felt like so simple and straightforward. But I'm like, what the hell is flowers going to do to help me get to where I want to go? Like, come on, seriously. And then the other one was writing about the journey of the soul, right? And I kind of put that aside a little bit. But at this point, and it was when I was like really at a low point when I asked myself this, I was like, okay, great, I'm going to commit to this. And so I ended up giving myself a weekly budget of £20 to buy myself flowers every single week. And at first it felt uncomfortable and like a waste of money. But in the end, it's like that's when I discovered like such beautiful flowers like the rose and the peony. And those beautiful flowers then just like effortlessly, as they effortlessly opened, it's like my heart did too. And that thing about being inspired by beauty, that's something that's true with me, that all of a sudden I was in spirit. When I was in spirit, I was inspired, and those whispers came through of like the words that I needed to share, and I started writing them down on my Moleskin book and then Instagramming them, and then that turned into my instant guidance oracle, and then that turned into just more and more and more writing. And then all of a sudden I found myself putting the last chapter of my book together, and I looked up and I discovered I was in the center of Regent's Park Rose Garden where I'd written the whole thing. And for someone who, you know, anyone who's been in the corporate world as well, we're in our masculine a lot of the time. And as entrepreneurs, it's actually, our masculine side is really important, but it's where our feminine is leading the masculine. That's when the magic happens. Yeah. And for me, I was like, I don't know how I could have written that book, Light is the New Black, without actually being led by that thing that lit me up. Yeah. So, and it's like being unattached by that outcome and just following the things that light us up and trusting that path is being created for us.
Yeah. I think that's a big one. And I also feel like that's such a good point about, you know, doing what lights you up, because I think so often we get so caught up in doing the things we think we're supposed to do rather than the things that actually do light us up. So we kind of form those habits of doing perhaps the wrong things every single day that are leading us probably further and further away from our true selves and from the thing that we should be doing, rather than focusing on like the simple things that do light us up, that make us feel inspired, that make us feel happy. Because when we sit in that energy, it's when almost everything falls into place, isn't it? We up level everything, don't we? And it's
absolutely, and that's it. And just like, even like you say, like, it's such a simple question to ask yourself. And you know, if you're, say, faced with the decision of like, okay, do I do an online course or an interview series or a book or whatever, we'll sit down and just tune in with the energy, the vibration, rather than the, oh, it's hard, or this is how long it takes, and this is the money. Forget about that. Just sit with the vibration, the feeling, get it into your body, feel that feeling, and be like, okay, well, which opens my heart? Which kind of like lights up my spirit? And which one actually makes me feel like I'm contracting?
Yeah.
And you go for the thing that lights you up, because I truly believe us as entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs who are really creating a change in the world, that's really our ultimate purpose. Obviously, it's to bring joy to our lives, but I believe it's actually to light up the world as well. And the way, the surefire way to light up the world isn't by trying to light up the world. It's by first actually lighting ourselves up. It's like Annie Lamott said this beautiful quote, which is, lighthouses don't go running around the island looking for ships to save. They just turn their light on, right, and stand there shining. And I think that's really one of our callings as entrepreneurs, to just be like, okay, well, let's forget about what's happening out there, whether it's the comparison thing or what's the need, what's the audience want or whatever, and actually come back here, come back home and be like, okay, well, like, be led from internally rather than otherwise. Because when we're, and it's so difficult to do this in a world that's so fast paced and with updates constantly. But if we let ourselves be swayed by what's outside of ourselves, we'll be constantly like rocking up against the ocean, against the rocks. Whereas if we're led from here, it's like it can just flood out from within us.
I totally agree with that as well, because I sometimes feel like when we're so connected to like thoughts and thinking we have to figure everything out, it kind of, we trip ourselves up, and that's when we get in our own way, I find. But when you let go and just trust, on my vision board I have the word trust, because I think it's one of the most important words you could possibly ever have in life, but also as an entrepreneur, when you're always having to have the courage to do things that terrify you and you don't know everything that's going on, you can't really connect all the dots up. But I just feel like when we tune more in with ourselves and we let go of what is perhaps those thoughts and that are going on in our head, that's when things start to flow, I find. And I just think understanding this whole thing and understanding everything that you're talking about in this book and connecting with this information is just so powerful for anyone that has a message they want to share, or anyone that has a vision that they want to make happen, and anyone that just wants to live that life feeling like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, something that feels good, something that feels right, and lighting up the world, like you say, and everyone shining. I just think it's so powerful. I could sit here and talk to you all day about this, because I love this topic so much, and I love anything that will help people to really have an amazing life and spread their light. So thank you so much for coming and sharing all your tips and everything with us, because it's just so good. I love it. I love it. I love it.
My pleasure.
So thank you. And for anyone who hasn't read this book, go and get it. I'll leave a link to it on the website, because it's so brilliant. Honestly, there are so many amazing messages in here. I've like marked pages where they're just such great stuff. And one thing I was actually going to ask you before you go is, do you have any affirmations that you could share that would help people to kind of really reconnect and tune in with themselves?
Oh,
you might not off the top of your head.
My favorite one. Oh, actually, I just looked up and I've got another one. Well, the first one that I've got on my wall is I get out of my own way.
I like that
I get
one.
out of my own way. The next one is, instead of like, this is for anyone who's like attached to an outcome, right? Where it's like, say, for example, for me, my previous one years ago was like, I'm a best-selling Hay House author, right? I shifted that, and my current one is, I shine my light as far as the universe sees fit.
I love that.
And it's like, it's none of my business what happens with the message. And yeah, I think that's a good place to be.
I love those. I'll have to write them down for everyone so everyone can keep hold of them and say them themselves, and maybe they can come up with their own as well that helps them. But thank you so much. And I would also love to hear from you on this. Leave a comment and let us know whether you've ever had that inner feeling that you know there's something bigger for you to do. Have you ever felt like you get in your own way over it all? And what out of all the tips Rebecca's shared are you going to test out for yourself? Leave a comment and let us know. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you next week for another 10-minute masterclass. Hello, it's Carrie here again, and I really hope that you've enjoyed the video that you just watched. If you did, then make sure you hit like and also share it with anyone else that you think might enjoy it too. And also, if you are not a subscriber yet, then come and join us. You can do so to the right of this video. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can also join the Female Entrepreneur Association via email, and we have so much goodness to send you. Join thousands and thousands of like-minded women from around the world who are determined to build successful businesses. Everything we will send you is all about inspiring and empowering you to build a successful business. Once a week we will send you a new 10-minute masterclass with a little freebie along with it. It's like a workbook or a principle to help you to put everything into action. And we've also got so much other goodness to send you, so definitely come and get involved. And I will see you next week for another 10-minute masterclass.